everybody. Yes, welcome to the Interesting Modelling Co. midweek mince pie, I think we called it this week. Rest assured, mince pies will be consumed after the show.
Mince pies have already been consumed before the show.
I had my first one yesterday. It was more like a mince pie tart thing, but it was delicious.
Did you? Well, we had ours tonight with not only the mince pie, but we also had, Liz had brandy sauce that I made for her, and I had just the plain white sweet sauce to go with it. It was splendid.
I shall be sprinkling mine with a dusting. I shall warm it up in the oven, and I shall sprinkle it with a little dusting of icing sugar. Anyway, welcome to Mince
Dusting
Pie
of
Watch.
icing sugar. How splendid.
Yeah, people tuning in tonight saying we tune in to watch a modelling show. Who we're talking about is mince pies. Look, folks, you know the score with this channel. It's modelling and cake, right?
It is. And on a Wednesday, it's often cake and modelling. So
yeah,
you
get our
have
priorities
been
right.
warned.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Especially towards Christmas. We may well not talk about models at all from now on a Wednesday, and only discuss various sweet, cakey.
Do you know
treats.
what? I am thinking Sunday. I might just kind of give like a review and say, well, you know, this week we've been doing the Lions mince pies, and they're okay. The ones the ones I really need to get hold of, but the problem is because places being shut down and everything, yada yada, are the Glenfiddich mince pies. Walker's Glenfiddich mince pies.
I have to say, I'm a particular fan currently of the Lidl mince pies.
Yeah, I might give them a go.
They're very good.
Yeah, their mulled wine is very good, by the way.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's very good.
Might have to try a little bit of that. I haven't done my Christmas shopping yet, basically because.
Dave Fleming, well, he's got a good point here. People confused as to what they've tuned into tonight. Dave Fleming says, better explain to non-Brits what a matter nice pie is. I think he means a mince pie. Actually, I was reading in a little book last week the derivation of it, and it started off as actually it was known as a Christmas pie or something, but it actually was. It was like pork that had fruit in it and everything, and it was all kind of like minced up. And then down the years, the meat element has disappeared, and it's just the fruit and the peel and everything has remained, which has turned into what we now know as a mince pie. So
yeah,
we'll do it.
Absolutely delicious as well.
They are delicious. Although if you haven't had Eckelfecken tarts, sorry for the language, Eckelfecken tarts, they are cross between a mince pie and a treacle tart. They are just, you eat it and you think, oh, this is like a treacle tart, and it's like, no, it's not. It's a mince pie. No, it's a treacle tart. It's a mince pie. And it's like, anyway.
Where would one get such a
Sainsbury's. Delight? Sainsbury's do their own, but again, Walkers also do Eckelfecken tarts. So,
and you can buy these all year round, can you?
Mostly towards Christmas. Should we talk about some models now? Because as Rob Monfils says, welcome to the mince pie special.
Indeed.
That was a joke. That was actually a joke on the Goon Show. It was like, are you a spy? Yes. And why are you covered in mint? I'm a mint spy.
Oh.
Right. Anyway, right. Let's kick off tonight with a bit of news this week. Indeed, yesterday, of a new kit from Tamiya, and it is Mr. B.
It is the McLaren Senna from 2018.
Ooh.
Just look at it.
Is that actually a British car?
That is a British supercar that looks like the sort of car you would draw if you were dreaming up the best looking car ever made. Isn't it beautiful? Absolutely astonishing.
Yeah, it is quite something. That I mean, when I saw it, I thought, oh, you know, for some reason, I just think of McLaren as a name rather than an actual kind of brand of cars.
Yeah, I mean,
which is weird. I saw that and I thought, oh, Ferrari, and then it's like, oh no, it's McLaren.
So, and we sort of forget when we're talking about McLaren, we obviously think about the Formula One team, but they are a company that deals with Formula One as a racing team, but they also make road-going cars like this 800 horsepower monster made out of carbon fiber. So basically, it weighs the same as a biscuit and goes
or a mince pie.
or a mince pie, and goes like stink. It's a beautiful car, and I think that this is going to be a beautiful model as well. It seems like Tamiya have pushed the boat out a little bit with this thing as well, and they've tried to create it in a way that's similar to the sort of build-up of the car. So you have a monocoque, and then it's built, and then panels are built around this thing. We also discussed before we came on air that there's an interesting point with this. Tamiya are offering this in kind of clusters of parts as well that will all be the same color, which will simplify painting somewhat. You described it as having been band-eyed, but we don't really know how that's going to work. So we're assuming that all the red parts are together, all the black parts are together, all of the parts that would be in kind of shades of metal will be together. But it looks like it'll be a typical Tamiya kit. It'll pretty much fall together. There's obviously no decals to go on this thing, so it's just a painting job as well. So for those who don't like complex decals, but I think this will be a really lovely kit to put together, and will look really superb. Obviously, that's the built-up model that you see there. According as well to the blurb that we were sent today by the hobby company, there are options for this for Japanese version and European version, I think. I'm just looking through. Yeah, European or Japanese spec. Also, the interior will be a pseudo racing interior and a stock road going interior as well. So that opens up some possibilities. But this also appears. I can't make it. I don't think it's a true curbside car, in the sense that it has engine detail, presumably that's visible under the sort of the back of this thing. So it says here that the specs for this is 24 scale plastic model kit. The body is captured in style uniquely. It's composed of a single monocoque part to which body panels are attached individually, allowing a highly realistic depiction of the car. Parts are designed to be assembled into blocks of colour, streamlining the painting process. Features a realistic depiction of, a depiction of the V8 twin turbo engine, which is visible through sections of the complex surrounding sort of body shell at the back of the car. Separate parts for brake calipers and discs ensure that while the wheels and brake discs rotate, the caliper remains stationary. Fabulous. Dashboard can be assembled as a standard road going or streamlined racing position. Metal transfers recreate the McLaren logos.
One of the things you can see it there.
You can see it on there. One of the things that we probably should stress about this car is, and this kit in particular, is get these kits while you can. The licenses and that kind of thing for manufacturers such as this are not open-ended often. So we've seen the same thing recently with, I think, BMW when I was trying to do the Mini. So pretty much get them while you can, because we don't know how long Tamiya will be allowed or able, under whatever their current agreement is with McLaren, to be able to produce this kit. And we'd hate for you to miss out on something that is that spectacular in miniature.
It's funny you say that about licenses and things, because I do believe for a while the Tamiya LRDG Chevrolet wasn't available because of licensing issues.
Yeah.
So, that's come back now. In fact, I had one, but I gave it to somebody. Can't think who that was. But yeah, it's fabulous kit, that one. But with any of these licensing things, I know it sounds like we're doing the hard sell here, but honestly, blink and you'll miss it, and then
absolutely,
and then you'll having to pay scalping prices on eBay.
Yes, yeah,
which
indeed.
you don't want to do. So
yeah. I think
do we have an idea on the price on this one at the moment?
Yes, we do. I think that Andy said it was $54.99. Yes, $54.99 is the price that we've got here. He also told us that it will be due in January. I think they were even more specific than that the worldwide release date was the 20th of January, I believe. So that's certainly when it's due out. Obviously, we're looking to get a sample of this thing, and so that we can hand it over and get one built up. $54.99 is pretty much ballpark for these sort of newer cars. I think
it's not pocket money prices, but then again, it's not a pocket money kit.
No, and also I think we need to bear in mind as well when we're discussing kits like this and we're discussing replicas of machines made by companies like McLaren, that licensing is not going to be free either. So you need to sort of understand that you're paying for the kit, you're paying for all of the R&D that goes with that, but you're also paying for the license as well. So so that's sort of an interesting thing that goes with this. But really, if you want one of these kits, try and get it when it comes out, because like I say, we don't know how long this is going to be released. It may be on the market for a little while, I don't know, but it's certainly worth putting that out there. But that's a great release, isn't it? That's a proper looking car. Wow.
I still can't really believe that has come from the soggy little island that gave us the Austin Allegro.
Yeah.
Bizarre. Yeah.
And,
so we can do these things when we actually make an effort. We can do these things.
Yes. I oddly as well, I live in a very small market town in the middle of Shropshire, and within the area that I live in, there are two people that own McLarens within the area that I live in Shropshire, bizarrely. Not that one. And we saw them in the summer. It's, and when you see one of these cars on the road, you can't help but just look at it and just go, wow, look at how that thing is.
Mike Reeves has corrected us. He says it's a hypercar, apparently.
Indeed. Wow. How did I describe it? As a supercar.
Supercar, yeah. This is a step up. So
so there we go. Tamiya's McLaren Senna 24 scale kit available January of next year, all being well.
Nice. So, right, so we've got two parts of tonight's show, really. Second part, we will be fielding your modelling-related questions and queries. I feel like an agony aunt now, or agony aunt. If you have a modelling problem, please write to this address and we'll endeavour to answer it for you.
Mine is a never-ending tornado build. Can you help me with that?
Mine is a never-ending Sommervente build. I've actually got some paint on it this week. Again, it's not the fault of the kit. It's just, I mean, even in the day job, I am so absolutely kind of like shot down now that I sit there and it's like today I've just been kind of like, I've been making a meal out of doing easy things.
You're just full of stollen and mince pies. That's what it is.
Full of something, I can tell you that. But yeah, so two parts.
No comment to make.
Yes, two parts tonight. The first one is we'll be talking about decals, and then the second part we'll just field whatever questions you can lob at us. Just anything and everything modelling related, but or indeed about mince pies. We're going to talk tonight about. Let me get off the fence here. We're going to talk tonight about what I think is the greatest brand of decals ever in the history of ever. And that's Model Decal.
Indeed.
Now, Model Decal started, must be 50 years ago now, when their first sheets came out. I'm pretty sure it was. I'll have to look that up. Model Decal was the brainchild of the late, great Dick Ward, who I'll fill you out with a bit more of his history in a second. And it was in conjunction with Model Toys, a model shop in Portsmouth. And they were, for the most part of their existence, they were only available through Model Toys. Couldn't get them anywhere else. And there were always the adverts in the back of Airfix magazine, scale models and scale aircraft modelling, with a great big long list of model decals. Shall we say, at a time when aftermarket decals were still in their infancy, when Model Decal turned up, they turned everything up a bit more. And over the years, Dick's research and artwork and his striving for perfection just set the bar, as did his work with kit companies, with Airfix and Matchbox and Frog and all, that. Essentially, the reason why you have stencils in model kits these days is because Dick started putting them into models back in the late 60s, early 70s. So, Mr. Pollard, your recollections of Model Decal?
Well, I came to Model Decal quite late on, actually. When I started working for Military and Scale, I sort of become a bit more aware of them by having them in my hand. But as a teenager growing up at the same time as you, I was always aware of them in Scale Models and always aware of them in the Airfix magazine, because they were always reviewed in those magazines. Jeff Prentice in particular was who was the Deckel reviewer for Scale Models, who got himself something of a reputation for tearing Microscale to pieces on a fairly regular basis because of their, what were, in all honesty, truly appalling instruction sheets. And he often got all of the model decals to review each time, and it was kind of just like a catalogue of plaudits, really, that just got wrapped up more and more with each sheet that he reviewed. And I grabbed this today. This is a January '84 issue of Scale Models, and in here he does a Deckel review on issue 71. Bearing in mind that I'm going to be looking at issue Deckel's up to 115, so they're quite after this one. But he finishes off this review with the following paragraph: "Experience has taught me that there is no such thing as perfection. However, this and its companions are very near and are certainly due to give modelers a lot of pleasure when Airfix finally gets its act together." The Deckel sheet he's talking about there was actually designed for the Avro Vulcan, and he goes through it in piecemeal and notes within that review that not only has Dick offered Vulcans on that sheet, he's also offered, I think, 29 Squadron Phantoms from the Falkland Islands, which include incomplete markings that he'd noticed when he'd done his research, and also done a number of grey whale Sea Kings that he's put in that sheet as well, noting again that there were inconsistencies in the markings. So I became aware of it from that. I think the one sheet that got my juices flowing and was the one that I wanted, which I never bought in the end, was sheet 55. Sheet 55 included Greenham Common Alcock and Brown Phantom, the one that was in the red, white and blue colour scheme.
Yeah.
And I was always really keen to get hold of this sheet because I kept on reading about it. And that was the first time that I became really aware of not only what he was offering to modelers, but the sheer quality. And it was only later, when I started to see these sheets, that I started to understand what people were talking about. There is no doubt, I'm very much with you on this. His Deckel sheets and his instructions are literally peerless within the industry. It's as simple as that.
Let's have a look at one. Now we've got two. I've scanned two examples from my collection tonight because I think these just epitomise, to me, kind of classic model Deckel. And this is sheet number 56. And
the one after the one I looked at.
Exactly. Well, actually, I think I even got the one before the one you looked at tonight. I did actually look at the one you looked at and decided, nah.
Let's not go for 55.
This is sheet number 56. Now, it's just a variety of subjects.
Yeah.
Lightning, you've got a number of early Royal Navy Lynxes there. Then you've got a Supermarine attacker. Then you've got a French T-33. And when you actually look at the Deckel sheet itself, you get all the full markings, you get instrument panels, and you get stenciling, and it's just, I don't know. You see, you'd buy a model Deckel sheet for something specific, but then you'd end up looking at the other bits on the sheet and go, yeah, I quite fancy a French T-33.
Yeah.
And that, to me, was always model Deckel at their greatest, in as much as you bought a sheet for one thing and then you ended up wanting to build something else, or indeed just wanted to polish everything else off the sheet. Now here is another one that I scanned, which is actually one of the Greenham Common ones, and this is a stone cold classic. This is number 46, and this is Greenham Common 77. Now look at that. You've got Harrier GR3s, you've got a German F4 Phantom, you've got Royal Air Force Jaguar, then you've got I think it's a Belgian Mirage. I can't quite see here what it is, or see on the Deckel sheet in a second. Yeah, it is a Belgian Mirage. Then you've got a French Super Mystère in both camouflage and tiger scheme markings. And then when you look at the sheet, it's like, bingo, look at that.
Yeah.
That's staggering. It's absolutely staggering. Again, quite a comprehensive set of stencils there. And you can see why it used to become a bit of a cliche that people would always go out and they'd buy two model decal sheets. Each issue, they'd buy two copies, one to use, one to keep. One to keep perfectly preserved. And it's also that gives you an idea there of the depth of research that Dick would put into these sheets, because every space on these sheets is covered with scrap views, it's covered with notes. This isn't the entire instructions, because you always then got another supplementary sheet which was just purely photographs of the subjects in the sheets and more written notes on the interiors, the undercarriage colours, any colour oddities, the kits that you'd require, you name it. He was thorough. And I just think let's put a caveat in this now, is that for their time, they were probably the best decal printing that you could get. Things have improved in terms of printing these days, that actually the model decal sheets, when you look at them now, they might look a little bit fuzzy. The decal varnish itself is certainly a bit on the thickish side. So that's about the only thing that dates them. But in terms of the accuracy and the research, they, to me, are still the benchmark.
Yes, there's no doubt about that. I was looking through this today. The sheet that I pulled out with the instructions was sheet 91, which is dedicated to EF 111 Ravens. And just sort of going through this, it's an entire collection of Ravens from Upper Heyford, but it's also got on here a hawk as well in a display scheme, a 1987 display scheme, which is grey hawk with a yellow striping around the side of it. But this gives you an idea of the instruction sheet. So that's one side. That's another side of the instructions. If I can sort of put that up, then you get another sheet in there with photographs.
That's it.
On there. Now, he's not only gone to the point of telling you how to paint it, put the decals on and all that sort of stuff. He's also, because all of these have got nose art on them, these particular aircraft, he gives you the history of the aircraft that the nose art was originally applied to. So you've got like a historical reference. Now, certainly I'd heard that people would buy two sheets of these, one to keep, one and one to use. But they would also buy these sheets and file these away, because these would then be used as historical references for future projects, because they were so in depth.
Which is precisely what I've done.
Yes, and I cannot think of another manufacturer of aftermarket decals that has provided this level of detail that goes with it.
Two come close for me. One is Model Up, Jean-Pierre Desprez.
Oh yes, his is very much like this, isn't it?
It's late. I think I said to him once, "You are lay model decal."
Yes, he would probably find that very amusing as well.
Jean-Pierre is just one of the funniest people there is out there, and his products are fantastic, and they are a modern day model decal. I think the other ones are it's Terry Higgins and Aviology. Does a lot of stuff for Canadian aircraft, Beaufighters, Mosquitoes, things like that.
Right.
He is very, very, very thorough. I mean, he's assisted me on some projects down the years where I've said to him, Terry, what do you know about this? And he quite literally will say, yeah, that Beaufighter had all the standard stencils, except under the tailplane, it had a non-standard one on the elevator. And it's like, superhuman. Fantastic. And yeah, I mean, I had the great pleasure of actually effectively being tutored by Dick Ward. 23 years ago it started, when he brought me on board to kind of help him out with some Airfix projects. Now at the time Dick was analog, I was digital. Dick was still drawing things by hand and cutting out letter tone and doing it that way. I was doing it all on a Mac, you see. And I think it's fair to say we had our moments, because he was very much set in his method of doing things. And I was to quote Brian Blessed, impetuous boy. I was just raring to prove what we could do with digital artwork and things. So there was always, it was a professional friction, not a personal friction. It was professional friction because we were two generations and two different disciplines kind of rubbing up against each other. But the thing that Dick absolutely instilled in me was research. Because without it, it's just pretty artwork.
Yeah.
And that has never left me. So to everybody out there who is probably on day 26 of decaling their Airfix FGR Phantom, I do apologise, but that's Dick Ward's fault. So
yes, indeed.
I am very sorry about that. But and as Dave says, Dave makes the point here, got a pile at Hannants at Scale Model World last year for £1 a sheet. He did indeed, because he came over to me and said Hannants are selling model decal sheets for £1 a sheet, and I went over there and nearly cleared them out because I bought 2 of everything, including one which I'd never seen before, which was for the Uragan.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and then I said to Dave, I need to get a Hella Uragan. Then he came back 5 minutes later and said, I found one for you, a £5. I said, here's £5, Dave. So
I seem to recall that Jeff Prentice reviewed that sheet, that Uragan sheet, and is it got French markings on it? Is that the
yes.
one? Yeah, because he was going on about all of the sort of the Gallic heraldry on that and saying how wonderful it was, and one of the things about research that does come to the fore, and why I think Dick Ward should be remembered for the groundbreaker that he was, is that when it comes to modern aircraft, you cannot take anything for granted. I'm currently working on a 617 Squadron hybrid Tornado GR4 that was also operated by 15 Squadron. And I assumed that 617 Squadron aircraft, painted in dark sea grey, dark camouflage grey, had pretty much standard markings on them in terms of roundels, fin flashes, the 617 Squadron badge on the nose and all of that kind of stuff, except the one that I'm building, which has got odd markings on it. For instance, this one here, this reference picture here, the bar on the nose, the 617 Squadron badge, is not edged in white. The one on my aircraft is. The fin flash is small and thin on this aircraft. The one on mine isn't. It's a much broader marking. So that's why it's important when you're putting models together and when you're adding markings to it, you don't make an assumption simply because those markings appear on one particular aircraft in one squadron at one point. Doesn't mean they're going to be the same for the next one. So you have to always do that. And that's where Dick's genius was, because he might offer you 3 or 4 aircraft in the same squadron, but they'll have those little changes that make them unique. And he often picked unique subjects as well. He was big on that. So if he wouldn't go to a squadron line at Binbrook and do lightnings, he would pick the odd one that was on there. And I remember that sheet. You'll remember this as well, when the lightnings changed over from dark green, dark grey into what was about 30,000 different grey schemes. He offered sheets that offered all of those different variations, and then he continued the trick when he did Sea Harriers.
I was just going to say, his Sea Harrier sheets are still the go-to reference source on Falkland Sea Harriers.
Absolutely, and I think I've got a number of those sheets, and I think I read somewhere that the Sea Harriers, at the point that flanked the Falklands War, they carried something like 70 different variations of markings and colour schemes, which I think Dick probably covered in almost biblical detail. It was quite an extraordinary trick. So if anybody's building a Sea Harrier and they want to build a 1982 era Sea Harrier, buy a model decal sheet. You won't need any more information. And he went on to, I think he wrote a couple of articles, didn't he, in Scale Models on Sea Harriers.
I've got them, yeah.
Which sort of covered all of those kind of things. So it wasn't just the products, was it, that he produced? It was the legacy that he left behind.
Oh, like I say, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today without without Dick originally kind of like getting in contact with me and saying, can you help? Because I think, can you help out? Because I think Dick realised that, he was coming up to that retirement age, and I think he was savvy enough to see that the world was changing around him. In fact, I did kind of give him some very kind of basic rudimentary lessons on using a Mac when he went out and bought one, but it was just kind of like he skimmed the atmosphere on that. He was never going to kind of like make an orbit, and actually get into an orbit with it. And he was a very, very, very small man with an infectious laugh and a very, very dry sense of humour, really, And yeah, his attention to detail drove me nuts sometimes, because he would, I'd be doing artwork and he'd ring me up and he'd say, "Oh, no, Jonathan, actually, go and have a look at the photograph. You'll see that's different to what you've drawn." And I'd be like, "Yeah, you're right." And I think that can be epitomised. The Dick Ward influence on me can be best epitomised by the fact that when I was doing the Royal Navy Phantom stuff for Airfix, 2-3 years ago now. Apart from the fact the job nearly killed me because of the attention to detail I was putting into it, and I think for most people who have built that kit are probably, they're probably just finished doing the decaling that they started 3 years ago. But the Dick Ward influence was the fact that there are 3 Royal Navy aircraft in there, pretty much identical colour schemes, extra dark sea grey and white, although there are still people arguing, were they extra dark sea grey or were they delivered in American colours, an American version of extra dark sea grey. Anyway, Dick said it was extra dark sea grey. The Royal Navy titling that goes on the back of the fuselages for each of the 3 schemes in there is different. The spacing is different on all 3 of them, because when you look at the photograph of the aircraft, on some of them, there's always a thing with A's on Royal Air Force and Royal Navy, is sometimes they'll put the space between the bottom leg of the A and the next character. Other times they'll close it right up so that it's almost touching, because it's hard to explain, but once you see it, you then realise that there is no such thing as standard spacing on Royal Navy and Royal Air Force lettering. And indeed, on some of the Royal Navy aircraft, the actual curvature of the characters was slightly different as well. So I ended up having to put in 3 sets of Royal Navy titles because they were all different. I then looked at various aftermarket sheets that came out for that kit, and they all had the same Royal Navy titles for every single scheme in the kit.
Yeah.
And I went out and had a look at them, and it was like, no, they're not. They're different. They are all unique. And that is the Dick Ward influence on me.
But that's down to expediency, isn't it, on the part of the designer and on the part of the printer and the instructions as well. If it's easier to put a set of markings in that are all the same, then that's what you do. If you assume that the color schemes are all the same, you're going to have to draw one set of plans and then overlay everything else.
Never assume.
No, absolutely not.
And I think this points to the fact that the reason why Model Decal weren't prolific, and when you look at it, I mean, I think they got up to about probably about 110 sheets over the best part of 25 years or so, was that Dick would only release something when he was happy with it. And that was it. And if he wasn't, he would carry on researching it. If he made a mistake, he'd do a reprint and he'd include an extra thing to correct that mistake. I mean, Dick made Dick did make errors on his sheets, but shall we say, over the course of however many sheets Model Decal did, if you were to collect all the number of mistakes that Dick made, they would probably average about one single aftermarket sheet out there at the moment.
Yes. I think that's probably true.
Yes. I mean, sadly, Dick passed away 2-3 years ago. It just... You wish he was around, because I could just pick up the phone and say, Dick, I'm working on at the moment.
Can you help me out?
Can you help me out? I'm lucky that I've got some of his original artwork and research here. Oh boy, it just instills in you the need to be thorough, and if you think you've got enough, just ask one more person.
I go back.
You look at the Model Decal sheets now. the printing on them isn't fantastic. I know somebody said here, let me just have a look. Andy King says, didn't Hannets reprint some model decal sheets? They did. I think they only reprinted things like the basic serial number and roundel sets and things. I don't think they did the actual the actual aircraft sheets, because the problem you got there is all the artwork is analog. It's all paste up, and it's all it is like a huge paste up, and the artwork will be incomplete, and there will be little arrows pointing in there saying it will give a color reference, because whoever was cutting the films at the other end, and we're talking about cutting hand masks for the printing process, would then go in and do the color separations that way. Of course, you do it on a computer now. If you're printing something like that, you're doing it in full color. You output it, and the film separations come out in a matter of seconds. You know, it's entirely different thing. We've actually got a very good point from Simon Dixon. It says Isra decals are good at that F-15 Basis. Yeah, Isra decals are fantastic. They really are. So, but I would say it's a handful of companies that kind of continue that model decal kind of thoroughness and attention to detail. There are some, you know, we're not saying that, you know, everything else is garbage. What we're saying is
no.
There are some very good sheets out there. You know, there are very good sheets out there, but then there is that model decal kind of aspiration.
Yeah, and I have to agree with you on Jean-Pierre's sheets as well. He is very much model decal for the 21st century. There's no doubt about it. I've bought a few of his sheets. In fact, the privateer that I've been working on for the last 38 years. I bought a sheet of his decals for that, and they are superb. And the great thing about him is that he offers. He's obviously very French in his approach, but he offers some really good choices as well. I have to say, in terms of the printing, this sheet 115 that I've got here, no, sheet 91 that I've got here for the EF 111, the printing on this is actually rather nice. So much so that I think I'm going to use these decals. I'm going to build one of the monogram kits, and I'm going to use these on just to see what they look like in place and to see how they are, and sort of go with that. The other thing about Dick Ward is that he not only did his own decals, he appeared in other places as well. And you'll go on to tell us some of the more mainstream things. But one of the companies that he did some work for, which came as a bit of a surprise to me, was a company called Red Star Kits.
Yes, yeah.
You may well remember this. This was a collection of 4 World War II, and I think there was a World War I aircraft in there, but certainly Soviet aircraft. This was released in 1984 and was I think sold through, it says Capital Model Supplies here, which seems to ring a bell. I think that might have been the only place that you could get it from at one point. But the kit included a MiG-3, LAG-3, Yak-3, and the World War I Anatra DS Anasal as well. And he did all of the decals for this. So his work did appear in other places other than on his own sheets. But he then went on to work for mainstream companies as well, didn't he? The larger companies doing design work.
Let's put it this way. Up until the point that Dick started doing decals for the likes of Airfix and Revell, Airfix and Frog, late 60s, early 70s, the decals were very much an afterthought. They were just, they were, I know we always joke about, we call them stickers, but it was almost that kind of approach. And I think a good example of that is if you look at something like the very early Airfix Spitfire Mark 9 sheet, you know, the classic Johnny Johnson one, was that they would look at it, you know, the company would look at it and they go, well, we're using a dark blue for the roundel, we'll use that for the serial number instead of black. And Dick would always be, well, you know, you should be, you know, this should be more accurate, should be more accurate. I think the first sheet that Dick did for Airfix, I think it might have been the P40 Kitty Hawk. I'll have to double check on that. But he not only had an influence on the decal sheets, he then started to have an influence on the kits, because he was bringing in more of a kind of a bedrock of research that the R&D guys were suddenly going, oh, he's quite useful, isn't he? You know, and they would be, you know, they would say, oh, Dick, can you get us some information on this, please? And you know, like I say, he started off with Airfix, Frog. I mean, Frog probably had better decal sheets in the 70s than Airfix did. They tend to be really quite comprehensive. Then he did stuff for Matchbox. He did stuff for Revell. The Reds did stuff for Red Star, which, as far as I remember, those were 4 kits tooled by Frog for the Russian market.
Yep.
Which then, when Frog suddenly kind of like sold their assets completely to the Russians and set up Novo. And I think people tend to think of Novo as a Russian company. No, Novo was a British company. Novo was the kind of marriage of convenience to bring Russian manufactured Frog kits back into the UK. When that all went completely, you had these 4 Russian kits there were 4 Russian kits that were left up in the air, along with several Frog projects that never quite made it into Frog boxes, which were the Heinkel 115, the Wellington, the Aerocobra. Some Venturas did get out, and there's probably a couple others as well. So apologies if I kind of like mangle it. Oh, P82 Twin Mustang. So there were some, that only ever appeared as Novo kits, or then the various kind of Russian manufactured ex-Frog kits never appeared as Frog kits. The 4 Russian ones were part of that story as well. I can only point people to the Leif Hellstrom book on Frog, which came out 31 years ago. It's a masterwork. It's a absolutely, still 31 years later, it's a brilliant book.
I've never seen that book. That would be a book that I would like to get my hands on, I think, at some point, and have a look at that.
I would say every modeler who, if you ever built a Frog kit or grew up with them, yeah, it's worth getting.
I'm fascinated by by those 5 or 6 kits that only appeared momentarily from Frog. What happened to those tools after that? Did they just disappear off into the ether?
No, they went off to Russia. In fact, the P82 did appear in the Novo range with the actual intended Frog artwork. You see,
right,
so that did actually make it through. The Aerocobra, the Wellington, the Ventura, and the Heinkel 115 never made it as Novo kits. I think the 115 may have been one of the ones that transferred to Revell, because the Russians weren't going to have any of those German aeroplanes in their range, as indeed they weren't going to have the Japanese ones. If you read the story, it's because the Russians said niet to what they described as aircraft of fascist origin. So they went to Revell, and as far as I know, the Wellington and the Aerocobra only really appeared in those, what can best be described as those typical kind of Soviet era, basically screen printed kind of recycled cardboard packaging. You know what I mean? It's that really kind of atypical, which again, it shows you how things have moved forward 30 odd years. That 30 years ago, that was pretty much the height of Russian kit production. Now we've got Zvezda.
Yeah, it's odd with Novo as well. Yeah, and now we've got Zvezda.
Well, the thing about Novo is people see all these kind of like badly packaged kits and call them Novo. No, Novo was the British end of things. Once Novo ceased, that was the end of Novo.
I only ever recall seeing less than a handful of Novo kits over the years. We used to occasionally get them in sort of local post offices and that kind of thing, or news agents would have them. I remember, I'm sure I had the Gannet at one point, and may well have had a couple of others. I can't quite remember. The only thing I remember from Novo kits was that they had decals that disintegrated in water. As soon as you put them in water, they just went
varnish extra.
Yes, and being wholly unimpressed by the whole thing, and never really wanting to buy any after that. But I think at that time, because I was young at that point, I'd not connected the dots really. I hadn't connected that Novo were using Frog tools and all that kind of thing. I hadn't really connected those up, so I didn't really see it. And you don't see a great deal of Novo kits on the second-hand market these days either, do you? See a lot of Frog kits around. Don't recall seeing too many with the Novo logo on the box. I agree with you about the packaging though, and that kind of thing. They really were a cut price. That was the other thing I remember about them. I remember them being as cheap as chips as well.
They were. Now, my local shop, model shop here, Simper and Sons, when they started getting Novo kits in, I think at the time, Airfix Series 1 blister pack kits were 25p. The Novo kits were 15p.
Yes,
Suddenly my allegiances were instantly switched.
yes. And then the next thing, and then following on from the sort of the Novo kits, we sort of moved on to the next kits that I saw from that part of the world were, VEB plastic art kits, which were seemed extremely exotic when they did a Beriev BE6.
I know. I read that review out the other week.
Yeah, I think I had to have that. I also seem to remember having a Tupolev 95 as well. Was another one that I had. They were sort of almost box scale, weren't they? They were random scales. Although I think the Beriev was 72nd scale. I'm not sure what scale. The 100th maybe. I think the Tupolev 95.
Well, that's the thing. I know I have this remarkable ability to remember things from 30 years ago with crystal clarity. And if you ask what I had for lunch yesterday, I'd have no idea. I got the VB Plastic Art Mil 6 Russian heavy lift helicopter. And I got that I was in Bath in about 1987. And I walked past like one of those kind of shops that sells everything and anything. Almost like a souvenir shop. And they had them in there for £1. And I thought, I'm like, models. Models.
Just have one of those.
That Mil 6 is about that long.
It's massive. Yeah,
it's 1/100th scale. Yeah. And it's like what?
But it's only got about 8 parts.
I know, but
it's got like 2 fuselage halves. It's got 4 or 5 rotor blades. I forget which now, and some undercarriage parts. But it is
rotor
huge.
Blades, though. Drooped rotor blades.
Yes,
yeah,
it did.
But the thing is that I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, well, this has got to be 72nd scale. No, it's 1/100th scale. And it's like,
and the other thing about those kits was they had incredibly shallow boxes, didn't they? I seem to remember. And very sort of, some of them were sort of very long rectangular boxes. They were almost made out of paper. So they were an extraordinary kind of thing. But it sort of brought to the Red Star kits and everything brought to life that at that point as well, which is an interesting sort of side street to take off that there was Dick doing decals for a range of Russian aircraft, when Russian aircraft were not exactly thick on the ground. We take Russian subjects today for granted that as soon as something Russian comes out, there's going to be 18 kits from 14 different manufacturers. Whereas back then, it was very unusual to get Russian aircraft kits of any description. We might have had the odd MiG-15, and there were a few. I think Tamiya were doing MiG-17s and MiG-21s, and obviously Airfix had done a MiG-21, and Matchbox had done a MiG-21. But there weren't a lot of them, were there? And there was this company producing 4 kits, new kits at the time, of aircraft that had hitherto not really been released.
But the thing is, they had been tooled up at least 5, 6, 7 years before, and had just sat there doing nothing. And they had been tooled up, as far as I remember my history, expressly for the Russian market. They weren't really supposed to be aimed at British and European modelers, British and continental modelers, American modelers. These were purely a means of actually kind of a quality product for the Russian market.
Yes.
Now that Ansaldo is actually a really nice kit.
Well, that's what it says in the review. It says that the kits are actually quite delicate and quite fine. There's also another little caveat in that review as well, which caught my attention, and that was that in the UK the kits were something like £9.65 for a box of 4, but unfortunately, due to rules that were outside of their remit, the kits would be £10.15 anywhere else. And I thought that was an intriguing thing. And it didn't mention postage. It just mentioned that outside of these shores, those kits would be some random amount, whatever it was, £1.10 more outside of the UK. But it seemed such an arbitrary figure, £9.65. But let's not forget that that back then as well, £9.65 for a box of 4 kits was actually quite a lot of money as well for small subjects like that. When you like you've just mentioned, an average Matchbox kit probably around that time would have been less than £1.
It would have been 1984. Would have been about, but actually have been around £1.
So that would be 4 of those kits would be £4. These were twice that amount of money. So that was sort of an intriguing thing. So that had sort of stepped into limited run arenas.
And there is actually a rather nice little footnote to this story as well, because that wasn't the end of Dick's association with those kits, because they ended up being reissued by MHA.
Oh, really? Is that where they went?
Which I think is where you can get them now. Which I think is where you can still get them now.
Wow.
And the MHA issues, to the best of my knowledge, had their decals done
by Dick Ward. There we go.
I know.
Nice I
really must get hold of one of those Ansaldos, because, like I say, Frog were, they occasionally pulled something out of the fire, but they tended to kind of like, mediocrity was a synonym with them. They weren't tremendously great kits, really. They had their moments, but that Ansaldo, they pulled it out of the fire on that one. It's really a quite spectacular kit. So, right, we've got some questions here for the last part of this evening. Mostly people asking for mince pie recommendations. No, honestly, we've got trust me, you won't be asking for mince pie recommendations. We should just be forcing them on you.
We will, with pictures.
Oh, I am. That's going to become a monster in its own right now. So
mince pie chat.
Absolutely, yeah. Simon Dixon says, do you guys know anything about the latest rumours of Meng buying up some wing-nut wing moulds for the World War I aircraft, including the Lancaster? No.
Beyond a cursory update on Facebook yesterday that made the suggestion that Meng had bought up all of these tools and that they were going to be releasing them, absolutely not. No. And I noticed that an ex-employee of Wingnut Wings came onto there and said, where did you get that information from? Our attitude on here is the same as our attitude has been all the way through this project. Until we know for sure and we see it in writing and we have it confirmed, we won't be discussing that at all, I don't think, because we can't speculate on what would be a sort of a business transaction between companies. But we've certainly not heard anything more than what's been discussed online. But you can guarantee if we find anything out and we have it confirmed, we will definitely bring it on here. That's for sure.
Yeah, we will be putting the mince pies down to tell you. So
yes,
absolutely.
Even if it's the middle of July next year, when we're still stuffing our faces with mince pies.
I have a cut-off. Once it gets to the end of December, that's it. Won't touch another one until the beginning of December again.
I have been known to eat mince pies out in the garden in the middle of summer. I have no shame about it. I'm a monster.
I'll just compose myself for a second. Dave Fleming says, how do you get over Modeler's block? With great difficulty, Dave. I mean, I am wading through it at the moment. I'm just wading through block full stop, really. Long year and a long, busy / difficult / stressful / 2020. So, but how do you get over Modeler's block?
I hear a lot of people who say build something different.
Yeah.
Build something different. If you only build aircraft, build a motorcycle. If you don't, only build armor, build an aircraft and all that sort of stuff. I found that doesn't really work for me with Modeler's block. I had a bit of block when the last diorama I finished in my Legacy series. Or rather the last one up to now that I finished, I didn't really want to build anything after that. And we discussed this over the weekend of the festival. And I do find that I have to sort of go through this dance with myself, that I try and sort of dabble around with different kits and I sort of I go, yeah, I'll try this, I'll try this, I'll try this. But I find that modeling and kits are very much like a TV program or a film. If I'm not hooked within the first 15 minutes, I won't finish it. So for instance, I'll pick a kit up and I'll glue a few parts together. If after the first hour I'm not really into it and I'm not enthusiastic about it, I tend to close the box and don't return to it. So I genuinely, unless I have a deadline, and unless I get hit with a deadline and I'm told, right, you've got to finish this off, you've got to finish it off by the end of next week, and I'm forced through that. If I'm choosing for myself, and Dave's presumably talking from the point of view of a hobbyist, which is obviously what everybody out there is doing, I find it extraordinarily difficult to choose. And I think part of that now is Modeler's Block for me is not about enthusiasm. It's about making sure I'm not wasting my time, what little time I have, building something that I don't think is going to give me any kind of sort of pleasure or I'm going to get anything from. So I find it very difficult. I think it's a bit like going into a sweet shop and trying to decide what you're going to spend 50p on. It's there's so much choice. Yeah, there's so much choice out there now, and so much choice with a lot of us in our stashes, I guess, that we're like, well, shall I build this one? No, shall I build this one? And then you reach a level of inertia where you don't touch anything, and that's why our challenges have been so good, because we pick a kit, we pick a date, and we decide that we're going to build that kit in that 10-day block. And I think that they're a very good way of forcing you through that block. It certainly worked for us. For a hobby, I'm not sure that you should worry too much about Modeler's Block. And I give you an example of why I think that is. I love to play on my PlayStation, but if when I leave here tonight at 9 o'clock and I fancy, watching a bit of TV with Elizabeth or, chatting to her or whatever, or I fancy half an hour on PlayStation, if I'm not in the mood, I won't play on it. No. And I think sometimes when you're doing something that's a hobby that's to enjoy, you've got to be in the mood. If you're not in the mood, leave it alone, do something else.
I would also say that I genuinely do think variety is the spice of life, to use the old cliche. And I would certainly, perhaps as a kind of a preventative measure for Modeler's Block, is if you are in the kind of like the modeling mood and you're keen to do something, is I would say try something different. Not try something different if you're just kind of like, I hate this hobby, I don't want to build any more models, and somebody says, what I do, mate, is you want to try something different. No, but if you are kind of, you're keen to do something, then I would say try something different, or just stretch yourself, get out of your comfort zone, build a motorbike, build a. If you don't build tanks, build a tank. If you don't build aircraft, build an aircraft. The worst thing that will happen is it doesn't turn out quite how you wanted it, but you might suddenly discover that actually you quite like building aircraft. I mean, this is the thing that I've discovered over the last couple of years of just being in the position where I suddenly get an email or a phone call and it's like, this has turned up. Can you build one for me, please? And I'm like, yeah, okay. What is it? It's a 1/9 scale Vespa. So, yeah, I'll build it. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I build it. Some of those turned out to be the most fun projects I've built in recent years.
Can I add a slight caveat to that, though? If you
are caveat to my caveat,
a caveat. I'd like to add a caveat to A/1.
Go on.
That if you are suffering from Modeler's Block, if you do pick something a little bit different, don't pick something that's then going to bog you down for weeks. Pick something that's going to be a quick fix, if you like, to get your enthusiasm back. Pick something that's maybe going to only take you a few hours to put together and a few hours to paint, just to get the juices flowing, if that's what you want to do. Sort of metaphorically build an Airfix Spitfire at the end of building a 32nd scale Tornado GR4, that kind of thing. I sense a degree of modeling block on Friday afternoon when this thing is finally done. Although I have now got to that point where I'm champing at the bit to do another legacy build. So who knows? I think we all have to sort of find a way through. It's difficult at this time of year though, because you've got like a billion other things that you want to do. Haven't you? A Christmas tree and sitting there and watching TV or playing out, and it's dark nights and everything. I always find as well that I'm far more sort of enthusiastic and far more willing to build models when it's sunny outside and I can have the windows open and it's than I am in the winter for some reason. I don't quite know why that is.
My most productive period is usually the 8 weeks when the BBC prom season is on, because I just make a date every night, listen to the prom from start to finish.
Yeah.
And that's it. I'm in the workshop. Got a question here from Ian Hartop. This is a good one. He says, did I do the decals for the Airfix starter kit JP4 in the red Pelican scheme? And if so, what red should it be? Do you know what? That's a very good question, Ian, because I asked several people, and some people said it's signal red, and some people said it's post office red. So I'm like, okay, so I'll have a look at photographs. So I looked at some photographs, and the thing that you can always tell is signal red is a very warm orangey red. Post office red is a very cold, kind of slightly harsher red. And so I looked at photographs, and I looked at, flicked through a whole load of colour images, and I thought, yeah, look, you can see there that the red of the fuselage is definitely warmer than the red of the roundel. Then I came across a whole batch of photographs where the red was actually the same as the red of the roundel. It was that same harsh red. And it's the same with Red Arrow's Nats of that early 60s period, because I was told, no, they were definitely post office red. They weren't signal red. And yet when you look at black and white photographs, you can see that the fin flash is distinctly darker than the rest of the aeroplane, and the rest of the colour of the aeroplane. So I would say signal red at some stage, post office red at another stage. It's just I will get to the bottom of what that exact colour is. But like I say, I've had this with Nats that I have been categorically told, no, they were definitely, the early Nats were definitely post office red. Then when you look at the photographs, you're thinking, well, why is the red on the fin flash darker than the surrounding red? An ongoing mystery. So I'm afraid that's the best I can do for that, Ian. And we've got another one from Tim here. And Tim says, has cockpit green so prevalent in World War II planes carried over to jets post World War II? No, it didn't. It just kind of went over to kind of blacks, depending, if we're talking about British aircraft, it went over to blacks for the 50s and 60s, and then just kind of dark Admiralty grey thenceforth for things like Harriers, Jaguars, Harriers, Tornadoes, things like that. So certainly zinc chromate green is still prevalent on modern aircraft, because I think you'll find the speed brakes on the Jaguar, the interiors of those are in zinc chromate primer, and it kind of appears in other places. But no, that's an interesting question. We will Dave
inside
Fleming's
open
watching.
bays as well on Jaguars.
Yeah.
Oh.
Dave Fleming's watching this. That's one for you, Dave. And I think we've got time for one more question. Let's just have a quick look. Mince pies, mince pies, mince pies, mince pies. We'll get to an actual modelling question in a minute. Actually, it's Anthony Bird. It says, is modeller's block the situation when you get a kit and then get dragged down thinking, I need this aftermarket after that aftermarket to make it look good? My suggestion, go back to your youth and just build no matter what it looks like, but on a £100 kit. Well, this is the funny thing, Anthony, is that's exactly, again, this was the thing that Spencer and I did at the very beginning of the year, was with that little Tamiya Panzer II, was just paint it, build it as is, don't throw any aftermarket at it, and then see what you can do with paint. And I think that's the fun thing we've had with the challenges thus far, the ones that we've, the ones that we've done. We've distinctly not gone for aftermarket. We've not thrown money at a kit. And I would say that, yeah, I think there is something to be said for, as Spencer said just now, is just go for something simple, go for something quick. And, like I say, one of the things we are hopefully going to be doing over the next few weeks, perhaps after Christmas, is going to do one of these pop-up modelling shows where I'm just going to put together one of those little Zvezda snap-together armour kits. And indeed, what we're talking about Sunday with the Art of Tactic range. I think those are brilliant palette cleansers. Something you could start on a Friday night and you've got it finished by Sunday evening.
Yeah.
So there is something to be said for a change of pace, but you've got to be in the mood. It's it's almost like saying you're a runner and you're tired, and somebody says, well, instead of running a 12K, just run a 6K. If you're tired, you're tired. Rest.
Yeah.
Go that way.
I find as well, mine tends to be, my way of getting through it tends to be sculpting. If I doing the walls, the styrofoam things, or just getting a load of plastic on and scratch building something, putting something that's not actually a kit, if that makes sense. Just putting some nonsense together, a fence post or something, or just doing a little. Remember earlier on in the year, I did a couple of wall sections. Did one that was like a Greek wall with a door in the middle of it, and I did a little like an alley. They were like day projects. They were just something that I just thought was interesting, and gave me something different to put together. That's a good way of getting over it. It's sometimes nice just to sit at the bench and glue things together for no reason other than to glue things together without worrying about painting them on all of that sort of stuff. I have to say quickly before we go, that definitely is a modern thing. When a kit comes out and you think, what aftermarket can I buy for this? I think we'll have a conversation about that at some point on a Wednesday night. I think that will be a good conversation, but that is very much like that. Buy aftermarket, I need the money. But the thing is, though, Mike, is that your aftermarket is very specific to certain improvements, visual improvements. We're not really talking about that. We're talking about replacing huge chunks of a perfectly good kit. So I think that's an interesting conversation, really.
And I think the other thing I would say is that if you are in a bit of a modelling rut, and you just think, I like the idea of making models. I just can't be bothered to make any models at the moment, which I think we all kind of have that, is go back through your modelling library and reconnect with your kind of past. I know I always keep banging on about Chris Ellis's How to Go Plastic Modelling, but honestly, I will pick that up and I will just go back through it, and every now and then I will just get that little kind of like frisson of what it was like as a kid reading that kind of stuff. Or I'll pick up some of those little Airfix modelling guidebooks. Or I'll pick up, or it'll be an old copy of Scale Models or Airfix magazine, or the Verlinden Way books.
Yeah.
Something like that. And look, and every now and then it just takes, you just get that little spark. And that's all it needs to just, you suddenly like, yes. And you might even just, one of the things that I found has kind of fired my enthusiasm recently is actually vintage kits.
Yeah. Well, I was going to make exactly that point, because the one thing that 2020 has given me is an understanding that actually, no matter what your level of technique, in my case, it's been okay for me to simplify everything to the point of what I was doing 30 years ago. And it's okay to build a very simple plastic kit, paint it and put it in a little vignette over 3 or 4 days without worrying that it's not the best kit in the world, the techniques aren't cutting edge, the materials aren't cutting edge, there's no aftermarket on it or whatever. That's been the one thing that I think has given me more in terms of a safety net when I get bogged down with things than anything else. And those vintage kits, as we've mentioned many times in this program, are dirt cheap. They take 5 minutes to build, and they're such fun to paint. And I think that's something that I'll always return to now, because frankly, it doesn't matter anymore. I'm happy with the way they look, and I love putting them together.
I'm the same. I am the same with Matchbox kits. Is I will periodically go back through kits that I built as a kid, and I now hopefully I can build them to the standard I imagined that I would want to build them to.
Yes, God.
But the funny thing is, the funny thing is, 10 years ago, I went through a phase of every time I went to Frew Model Centre, and hello everyone at the Frew Model Centre if you're watching this, I will be hopefully visiting soon once our latest tier of tears ends in tears, is that I started going back through the Revell reissues of some of the Matchbox armour kits and, reacquainting myself with them. When I was having a kind of clear out through the workshop earlier in the year, I looked at some of those and I thought, I could do them so much better again. I could, my techniques have changed. I've done things differently, and I thought I could do them so much better. I want to have another go at doing it. And in the end, I just put out a thing on Facebook saying, look, anybody want some Matchbox armor kits? They're painted, scrap them, do what you want with them, but just rather than me bin them, you have them. And the guy got in contact with me and said, how much do you want for them? I said, just have them. I just want them out of my workshop. So again, it might be that I think to myself, the little Matchbox Panzer II, I might come back and revisit that at some stage because I'd like to do it again 10 years later. But actually, things, I think I can build it better 10 years later.
Yeah.
Which to some extent, actually, I'm really happy about because it means at least my skills, such as they are, they've not stagnated. But in part, that's because I've come across other modelers who've got new ideas and things, and I've absorbed them into my collection of kind of like tricks and things and whatever. And it's like I look at things and I think, now if I'd have built that little Panzer II the way that Martin Kovac would build it, be a better model this time. Well, just another quick one. So this is what I like about these live things. Is Dave Fleming says Red Pelicans same as the Roundel, and he's put up a nice link there, which I don't think I can't quite cut and paste it here at the moment. And the thing is, Dave, I then found this picture online. Bear with me a second. Let's just get rid of the comment. I found this picture online, which again is the dilemma because there is contemporary footage of the Red Pelicans, and as you can certainly see on the fuselage roundel there that the red centre spot is darker than the red of the fuselage. But if you look in the background, you can definitely see that the red of the fin flash is darker than the rest of the...
That's not the same colour at all.
No, it's not the same colour.
No.
And therein is my dilemma, because I look at one photograph and it's like, it's the same. Look at other ones, it's not the same. No,
that's definitely got a much more orange tint to it.
We've got another comment here. We'll wrap up in a second. Dave says, I think that's a Dayglow one. Now, you see, again, Dave, I don't think from what I could tell, that some of them have been misinterpreted as Dayglow when it's actually signal red. This will rumble on. This is Jet Provis Gate, Pelican Gate, this is.
Mince pie gate.
I say we're much safer when we're talking about mince pies. You don't get these experts popping up kind of giving you facts and things.
We don't like those around here.
We don't like facts. No. I definitely need a mince pie now. Well, Dave and I will carry on this conversation afterwards, actually, because I'm going to send him all my Jet Provis pics and say, fill your boots. Yes. But this is the quandary of researching, because you come across something, then something else contradicts it, then something else contradicts it. The one fixed point we know is that the roundel, the centre of the roundel, is post office red. So, luminous orange. I don't think so. But we'll carry on this conversation another time. Just quickly, any other business, Mr. P?
No, I think we've covered what we wanted to cover tonight.
We overshot by 15 minutes, actually 10 minutes, because we were a bit late going on the air tonight. But hey ho, that's thank you to everybody who's turned up tonight. That's very, very kind of you. And we will be back on Sunday with our news programme. And let's just say we've got a packed show on Sunday. The model industry, as I say, after the modelling world ended 2 weeks ago, suddenly it's sprung back to life with an absolute avalanche of new releases.
Including one I seem to recall from our favourite
Eastern
kit
European
company is back. Manufacturer.
Yeah, they're back.
If you thought we'd released all of the information on their kits for this year, I think you're mistaken.
Yeah. So on that note, it just remains for me to say thank you for watching. As ever, whatever tier in the UK you're locked into at the moment, stay safe, stay out of trouble, and eat mince pies. And we will see you on Sunday. So for myself
and for
Mr.
me,
Pollard, see you later. Take care.
take care. Bye.
Bye for now.